12 minutes before 7 here on Morning Live. On Sunday, the board of Transnet announced its decision to terminate the employment of Group Chief Executive, Mr. Siyabonga Gama. The reasons provided are related to alleged violations of his financial procurement and governance. Now, late in September, the board served Siyabonga Gama with a letter informing him of its intention to terminate his employment. Gama was given 10 days to state the reason why his employment should not be terminated, which the board says he has failed to do. Now, 5 months in office, the board says a lot has happened for them to continue with the relationship. Joining us now in studio is Mpho Letlape. She is a non-executive director at Transnet. Thank you so much for joining us, Mpho. It's good to have you here on the program.
Thank you very much for inviting us to come and speak to you as well.
So let's just get the issues of the attendance to work. We hear that he did attend work yesterday. What's the information around that?
Yes, yesterday he did come to work. Remember, yesterday was going to be his last day at work. He needed to come in to clear whatever needed to be cleared, sign whatever needed to be signed, and then so he came into work. There were a few board members. We had a FinCom board subcommittee meeting yesterday, so we had a conversation with him at which he then gave us the letter saying that he does not accept our letter that he received on Sunday evening, and that he is going to refer that to his lawyers, and that we need to respond to him by evening yesterday. So we did respond to him that we stand by that we terminated his employment. So for all intents and purposes, Siyabonga Gama no longer works at Transnet. As of yesterday. Yesterday was his last day of employment. So what is going to happen now is his employment contract determines that we need to give him 6 months notice. So what we're going to do is we're just going to process payment. We don't need him to serve notice, but we will pay him out his notice period. Last night, there is a letter that came through from his lawyers. Again, I have not really read the letter properly that came on, that alleges that we are in contempt of court, and we don't believe we're in contempt of court. Court judged. It didn't judge against the termination. The court said that whatever dispute that he has with the board needs to be referred to arbitration. Court did not say we cannot terminate him. And in fact, if you allow me, I just want to read for you what is in the judgment. It says that the interdict that he applied for to have the notice to terminate not executed, interdict was not ordered by the court. In actual fact, the judge specifically stated that Mr. Gama has no right not to be dismissed.
Yeah.
In the judgment that was in. So consequently, we are not constrained from dismissing him, hence the action that we took over the weekend.
However, his comment to all of that, and this is just speaking to the media last night, he went on to say that Transnet is abusing its power by announcing his dismissal, and he's considering legal steps against Transnet, which I'm sure you've heard about. Yes. He accused the entity of believing it was above the law. He said that the day Transnet had reportedly said in a letter would be Gama's last in his position, he confirmed a letter had been sent to him directing him to report to work, collect his belongings and return Transnet property. Gama dismissing the letter as smokescreen, saying he had responded through his lawyers to say the letter and its directors were unlawful. He
responded yesterday to the letter, but the important thing is we asked him to, in 10 days, come back to us to tell us why we should not terminate his employment. That has not happened. He has not come back to us to say why we should not terminate his employment. So that is one of the reasons we have terminated his employment, because trust and confidence has been eroded from the board. The board does not trust and it does not have confidence that he is in a position to lead the organization to where the organization needs to go to, given that it is really one of the anchors of the South African economy. Yeah. And we really need to get it working, and we need to get it working well. We need to look at the procurement lapses. We need to look at the financial lapses. We need to look at the general governance and fiduciary lapses and make sure that we bring in somebody who will adhere to all the requirements that procurement-wise, controls-wise, finance-wise, and all of that, that we can then lead the organization.
Let's talk a little bit of detail. So Transnet is accusing Gama of alleged violations of his financial, procurement and governance. Can you give us some examples?
Well, I cannot give you specific examples now, but we've talked about them over the last few months. The Funduzi report that was commissioned by Treasury, the Werksmans report that was commissioned by the board, and the MNS report that was commissioned by the board. All those documents are now, in the public domain, and they state very clearly what the lapses has been. And the relationship also, it really has, it hasn't really worked.
Yeah, when we look at these findings on the matter, which is in this report by Treasury with MNS and also Worksman's attorneys implicating Gama, can you give us a little bit of substance into this report, though?
Because those matters are the matters, if this goes to court, are the matters that are going to be taken up. I feel that I would put the board at a disadvantage because I don't want to be airing the matters in this particular interview, but they've got to do with procurement. They've got to do with financial controls, and then they have to do with just general fiduciary responsibility that any board member should take seriously and should be vigilant, deliberate, and everything in making sure that certain things do not happen.
It is, as you say, it's very much so in the public domain. It's all over the place. And when you talk about some of the stuff, it says his axing comes after investigations found that he and former CEO Brian Molefe and Gupta Associates acted unlawfully in relation to the purchase of those locomotives, 1,064 locomotives for 54 billion rand. Can you talk to us about that, though?
And that again is a general knowledge that the board approved 38 odd billion rands for that. In the end, the contract that was signed was for 54 odd, so it's an increase of 15 million, almost 15 billion rather rands that are not fully accounted for. And when it was broken up, if you look at the Funduzi and the MNS report, they say that yes, we do have to cater for inflation and all of those other exchange rates and everything. Their calculations, MNS have come up with 8.8 billion rather, and Funduzi came up with 9 billion. So we are paying at the very least 9 billion rands more for those locomotives than we should have paid. But I really do not want to go into the detail because it is going to be gone into over and over again, and I don't want to be putting the organization at a disadvantage. But what is common cause is Werksman said 15 billion, Funduzi said 9, MNS said 8.8, and that is work that is still ongoing to determine exactly what it is so that the next steps can be taken.
I suppose a question, and I'm hoping you can talk to this, what steps were taken internally when all of this came about? Because obviously it became, leaked to the media, Gupta email leaks, all of these things came into the public domain, but before things got to this stage, what was done internally?
Internally, what we did was to look at there's a lot of other reports that were brought in internally, and as everything was perused and looked at, we then realized internally that the very least we needed to do was to do those 3 suspensions of a few weeks ago. But as also we went further in, we then realized that for Mr. Gama, we really need to terminate his employment. And again, I cannot go into the detail, but there were things that happened that, we also had a qualified audit as well in addition to all of this. So we realized that we need somebody that is more vigilant when it comes to the issues of governance, procurement, finance, and general internal controls for us to do that. So that's the process. As we perused, as we looked, as we investigated further, we found that really we don't have the trust and we don't have the confidence as a board that Gama is the person to take us forward.
And yet it's reported that Transnet will pay him out for 6 months.
That's in his employment contract.
And what is the amount there?
we haven't calculated the amount then, but as over the weekend, an amount of 7 million rands per annum has been muted. So, I mean, we still need to do that because there's pension funds, there's a whole lot of leave not taken or leave taken. There's a lot of calculations. HR is currently working on determining exactly how much it is going to be.
So with all of this going on, he's still entitled to that payout. So, you know, last week, as we sort of come to a conclusion, Gama approached the Labour Court in Johannesburg, and the court stayed on Gama's application and ordered that his dispute with Transnet be referred to arbitration. Now, just give us the position on that issue now.
Well, we accept and we understand that every dispute that we have with him should go to arbitration, but we don't have a dispute with him. We're just terminating his employment.
Which but is a dispute in.
He can declare a dispute against us for doing that, and then we can then go to arbitration and take it from there.
All right, we leave it there for this morning. Thank you very much for coming and talking to us about this. Mpho Letlape, she is a non-executive director at Transnet, talking to us about the status of Siyabonga Gama, who, as of today, is not allowed to enter the premises of his business. So on Sunday, the Board of Transnet announcing its decision to terminate the contract of Group CEO, Mr. Siyabonga Gama. They talk about different issues relating to this, violations of his financial procurement in governance. That's at the head of all of that. All right, the time is